Welcome to the Movers and Shakers of Fresno. It's our August meeting. So I want to thank you for taking some time to come out and join us. This is one of our better turnouts, so I'm excited to have you all here. So today we're going to be talking about step up your exercise game. So this is about intensity and it's about gamifying exercise. So a little bit about me, if you don't know me, my name is Jessica Tax. I'm the CEO and owner of Move Up Health and Fitness. So this is my gym. And I've been in the exercise arena before 2008, but I started as a personal trainer in 2008. I was going to Sac State at the time to get my bachelor's in kinesiology, so I finished off that program. And along my journey, I decided that I wanted to get into medicine. And that ultimately led me to work with people who had been diagnosed with cancer. There was a cancer recovery program. I'm based out of Sacramento. And there was a cancer recovery program that I got involved with. And I started to see, I'd already known the benefits of exercise, but I started to see how it could be applied to people who were diagnosed with health conditions and how it could help them with their outcomes and their quality of life. And through that, I actually started working with people with Parkinson's. And then my dad got diagnosed in 2018, and that's how we ended up here. I wanted to provide programs in the Fresno area. I'm sure as you know, there are limitations in what is available in the area. So I just wanted to bolster what was being offered. And so I've been in the industry for a long time creating these exercise programs. So just to give you a little bit of background on my credentials, I guess. So why is intensity important? If you are not new to Parkinson's, you've heard that intensity is very important for people with Parkinson's. That's really kind of the best way to get benefit from your exercise program. So why is that? And it's because intense exercise has been shown to be neuroprotective. And it induces neuroplasticity. So what that means is it induces changes in the brain. It causes your brain to fortify and improve structures in the brain. And then it encourages the brain to protect what it already has. And that's important for Parkinson's, right? Because it's the degeneration of the brain, those dopaminergic cells. And exercise is emphasized because that's the same area of the brain that is being impacted by Parkinson's. So you can kind of get like this targeted effect. What I want to talk about today and what I want you to learn from this talk is that there are many ways to achieve intensity. We often will hear cardio as our option to address intensity, but there are different aspects of exercise where you can incorporate intensity. So that's really what our talk is about today. So what is intensity? Well, I want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page in terms of definition before we start talking about how to incorporate it into your exercise program. So ultimately, think of it as effort. So the more effort you're putting into something, the more intense it is. Add to that in order to really hone in on the neuroplasticity, inducing the neuroplasticity of the brain, a novel experience, it needs to be challenging and it needs to require your focus. So if you can do other things while you're doing this activity, it's probably something that you're good enough at that you don't have to give it your undivided attention. It's not intense. Okay, so think of intention. If you have to be intentional in it, if you have to be effortful in it, that's probably intense, okay? Keep in mind that these should be things that you have to revisit in order to get better at them. So for an example that's not exercise related, learning a new language. You're not gonna learn it in that one effort. You're going to have to revisit it multiple times before you get that new language down. From an exercise standpoint, let's say you're trying a new exercise, maybe it's a compound exercise, you're doing a lunge with a press, and you're having to repeat that exercise in order to get it down mechanically, or for boxing, you're learning a new combo, you're learning those techniques. So you have to do it repeatedly in order to get good at it. So that's what you're looking for. So now looking at it from an exercise standpoint, there are different components. So I already talked a little bit about the cardio component, and I'm going to try not to get too in-depth here because I could talk about this all day long. So the cardio component, in my opinion, this is one of the easiest in terms of achieving intensity, partly because it's very obvious to you when you are being intense, okay? So this is when you're moving along and your body's going, hey, why are we doing this? I'm tired, like, can we stop now? That's intense, right? And so you can tell you're getting feedback from your body that you're working really hard. It's not something that is maybe a little more obscure, and you'll know what I'm talking about as we get into these other categories. So the one thing that I want to add to cardio is that we tend to pick that activity that we like. So I'm a runner, I like to run. My body gets used to running. It's not a novel activity, and so I lose that aspect of challenging my brain, of stimulating my brain, because my body knows what running is. If I go and I ride a bike or I go and I swim, suddenly that activity is even more challenging because I'm not conditioned for it, but then I also get that novel aspect of it. Because these are rhythmic exercises, so now I have to figure out how to coordinate. My brain is having to process, how can I be more efficient so that way I don't have to work so hard. So if you have your one cardio activity that you really like, I encourage you to find others. Okay, change it up every now and then. From a body standpoint, it's also good for your body because you're not wearing out your joints doing the same activity over and over again. Okay, then strength. So a lot of times these other components of exercise are overlooked because cardio exercise increases the heart rate, it gets the blood flowing, it's very obvious that it's doing good things for our body. Strength can also induce neuroplasticity in the brain. So when you look at it from an intensity standpoint, probably one of the more well-known aspects of strength training is overload, this concept of lifting heavy weights to the point of fatigue. So you go and you let's say bicep curl, because everyone's familiar with bicep curl. So you go and you grab your 10 pounders and you go and you're lifting and you're like, all right, it's starting to get heavy. Okay, all right, okay, one more. And so you basically are lifting till failure is the concept. There are other components of strength training that you can incorporate to make the exercise more intense or increase that novelty aspect too, and it's things like pacing, how quickly you're lifting, how quickly you're lowering. It's incorporating like phases of the lift and focusing on those different phases, so concentric versus eccentric, isometric, things of that nature. One thing that I want to note is the power component of strength. So this is when you have to move a weight quickly. So think of, springing actions, plyometrics, throwing actions. Those are your power movements. Those are things that you want to make sure that you're incorporating into your routine because that is one of the areas that declines most rapidly just with age in general. And we see it a lot with our Parkinson's population when we have somebody who's new. Skipping. We do skipping as part of our gait training during the class. They have a hard time getting off the ground because they've lost that ability to propel themselves away from the floor. So power components of your strength training are important to incorporate in your fitness program. So then looking at agility and speed, so just from kind of breaking down what agility and speed are and the different components. So you're looking at your cadence, how quickly you're able to move through that pattern, that movement pattern. How quickly can you change directions? So you can challenge that aspect of your agility, so you can be going in one direction and try and change faster, making it more intense, requiring more focus. And so you basically want to look at all these different ways of training these areas and see how you can make that more intense. Where can you make that more intentional? Where can you put in more effort? That's kind of the theme that you're going to see as we go through these. And then making sure that you're targeting both your upper and lower body, both for agility and just strength and everything, right? So, doing things like we have blaze pods back there, we'll bring those out. That's can be upper and lower body agility. It's responding to the lights and trying to hit them as fast as you can, challenging your reaction speed, that kind of thing. So those are the type of factors for agility and speed that you can start working in some intensity. Balance is also very important for people with Parkinson's. They tend to be off balance and more of a risk of falling. And so in terms of intensity there, you can challenge your balance in various ways. So you can focus, most people think of balance as like, okay, well, I just need to get on one foot, that's my balance. If I can do that, then I'm balanced, right? And I have good balance. But there are different unstable positions. So you can do tandem stance where you're standing heel toe, and you can move from this. You can do up on your tiptoes. So finding different unstable positions to do your exercises in. Finding unstable movements. So things where maybe you're walking across a beam now. So you're not holding a position, you're dynamically changing your position and challenging your balance as you move through those activities. There are different variables like the visual feedback. So you can move your head, you can move your eyes, and you can close your eyes, and all of that will challenge your balance differently. So there's a lot of different variables that you can change, and a lot of people in this category specifically are very nervous to challenge themselves. But if you are able to hold your position for a long period of time, say more than 30 seconds, or you're able to do that activity without messing up for more than 30 seconds, it's probably not challenging enough. So you want to up your intensity. You should be losing your balance. You should be trying to catch yourself. You should have to respond to losing your balance, okay? In terms of complexity, there are various ways to challenge the complexity. So you can do things like multitasking, where you're trying to accomplish two things at once. So maybe we do in class, you're trying to do an exercise and you're also counting in German. Or you're trying to do an exercise and you're also telling us 6 different things from a category. So you're challenging yourself cognitively while you're doing an exercise. But this could be, maybe you're doing your cardio and you're learning the lyrics to a new song. So it's just trying to do 2 things at the same time, or multiple things at the same time. It can be complexity from the standpoint of using both my upper and lower body. It can be complexity from the standpoint of using opposite sides of my body. And if you haven't done those exercises, you'll be surprised at how easy it is to suddenly end up on the same side. And so it's actually really challenging your brain to use both sides of your body at the same time. So that's what I mean by complexity. So kind of head games. And working those into your exercise routine. And then mobility is another area where you can incorporate intensity. And so these are kind of more components, complexity and mobility, that you will add to your cardio, to your strength training, to your balance and agility. So mobility, I want you to think of it in terms of range of motion and fine motor. So range of motion, we talk about big movements, right? So one of the programs for people with Parkinson's is the LSVT, big program, and they'll talk about, getting these big ranges of motion where your whole body is moving and you're getting length through the body. So that's mobility. Getting mobility through your shoulder. So can you get those end ranges of motion, or are you limited? Are you here? So figuring out what your end range of motion is and kind of working to get beyond those and doing exercises that help improve that mobility through your arms, through your shoulders, your hips, and your spine. Those are some of the targeted joints that you want to focus on. And then fine motor. So being able to do things like tapping the ends of your fingers and doing that quickly, being able to separate your fingers, and then being able to separate your toes. And I love giving clients these exercises because they're like, wait, I'm supposed to lift my big toe and keep all my other toes pushed down into the floor? What is that? That's crazy. You know, I didn't even know my big toe could move independently of my other toes. Or, you know, spreading out your toes and bringing those toes together. We often overlook our feet, but we are on our feet constantly. We rely on them all the time. And that toe mobility is huge in our overall stability. So getting those toes moving is important, and you can challenge yourself. And I'm sure your brain, when you first go to do it, will just be moving your toes all over the place because it doesn't know how to connect. So it's a great exercise, a great way to incorporate intensity into your routine. So let's go over some practical examples. I've kind of given you a number of them as we've gone through, but to give you some more specifics. So for cardio, I didn't put anything very specific, just high intensity intervals. So what that means is that you are doing a burst of effort for a short period of time for your cardio. So an example would be on the treadmill. Let's say that you walk on the treadmill. You want to put your incline up. Let's say you're walking about as fast as you're comfortable walking. The way that you can increase your intensity is to increase your incline, and then you're walking at more of a ramp. And so you're gonna maybe up your ramp 3 or 4% and try and walk for a minute or two. And then you go, okay, I can't do anymore. And you put it back down and you recover. And then you do it again, okay? So that's the concept behind high intensity interval training. It's essentially sprints, but there's a wide variety of ways of targeting sprints. So then strength training, I gave you the example of the bicep curl. So, you know, shoulder press, squats, you're focusing on weight that you can only lift, say, about 8 reps, and then you can't lift it anymore. The word of caution here is when you start training to fatigue, so if you're going to use this overload principle, you have to be careful of compensation, because a lot of times what we do is when our muscles fatigue, we go, well, I'm going to do it anyway, and then you start using parts of your body that weren't designed for that movement, and that's how you get injured, okay? So when you fail, just fail. It's okay. That's the point. Okay? So if you're going to be doing a shoulder press and you get tired, don't go, because you're going to hurt yourself, okay? So we talked about training for power, and so doing things where you're, you know, tossing a ball or you're slamming a ball down into the floor, you might find that you have very little capacity to generate a lot of power, and so you're thunking the ball into the floor, and as you work at it, then suddenly you're getting this power to slam the ball on the ground. And then eccentric training is that lowering phase. So there's a lot of research that supports huge strength gains from eccentric training. You also tend to get very sore. But for example, with that bicep curl, it means that you're lifting the weight, you're lifting a heavy weight, but you're slowly returning that weight back to your starting position, and fighting that lowering of the weight is the eccentric phase, and that is where you build the majority of your strength. So then I didn't do all the different topics in terms of giving you guys examples, so I do want to point that out. So balance, the example that I'm giving, and I tried to give some examples for people that, you know, if they were at home, that you could use, that you don't have to have equipment all the time. Make sure that you're positioned in a corner of a room so you have walls on either side of you if you lose your balance. And then you can stand on a pillow and close your eyes. So you're on an unsteady surface, you're on a squishy, uneven surface, and then you close your eyes, you take away that visual feedback, and you'll notice, okay? But you're in the corner, so if you lose your balance, the walls are there to catch you, okay? Complexity, learning a dance routine, okay? That's a great way to challenge your ability to handle a complex activity. So having to learn the steps both from a technique standpoint and from a series standpoint, right? You have to learn them in series. So it challenges your memory, it challenges your coordination. We will try an exercise called misdirection. And so you'll see it towards the end here. I use a pool noodle, or Dallas uses a pool noodle, and we give you both a verbal. Did I just lose my battery?
Yes.
All right, it's getting exciting. There you go. Okay. So we're using a pool noodle and a verbal cue. So you get a visual cue and a verbal cue, and I say back, forward, right, left, and I'm pointing. And you either have to listen to the visual cue or the verbal cue, okay? But you're getting both, so you have to decide which one you're listening to. And it's actually harder than it sounds, okay? And then in terms of mobility, I gave you this one earlier, trying to lift your big toe and keep the rest of your toes pressed down. Yeah, so if you want to challenge yourself, or if you don't want to do the toe one, you can try doing something like splitting your fingers and seeing how much you can split your fingers, right? And then you can see how quickly you can do it, yeah. And you're all learning something new about your ability to work those fine motor skills. All right. Another example of the mobility one is trying to get bigger movements, but using targets. So you can put tape on the wall and you can try and reach and tap that tape, okay? So those are examples of how you can work the concepts that we've gone over into your exercise routine. So obviously it's not a ton of examples, but it gives you an idea of how to apply those. So then now we're going to take it into kind of a similar topic, but slightly different. So gamifying exercise, turning it into an activity, a game, to get more benefit out of your exercise. So why would we want to do that? We would want to do that because it's fun, right? A lot of times when we are playing, we really enjoy that. And if we enjoy it, we're going to do more of it, and we're going to do it more often. And a lot of times we actually do push ourselves a lot harder when we're playing than we do when we're working, right? So if we're working, a lot of times we fight that process. But if we're playing, it's all out, right? You've got that competition aspect, you've got that enjoyment aspect, so you're pushing a lot harder. The other component of it is that it creates the ability for you to connect socially. And that has its benefits from just being more social. But then it also has this added benefit of, there's two things that it adds. Competition. So there's a lot of research around when people are doing similar activities together, that it creates this competitive environment, and you tend to push yourself harder when you're competing. And then the other component is the fact that that person is unpredictable. You don't know what that person is going to do, so you have to react to environmental variables that you cannot anticipate. And that's a lot of work for your brain. Okay, so that's a good component that it adds. And then playing often checks a lot of boxes. You tend to be exerting yourself physically, you're multitasking, you're hitting a lot of those different areas that we talked about, whether it's your cardio, your agility, and so it incorporates a lot of different things all at the same time, and you often don't even realize you're doing it because you're playing. As soon as you get a ball out there, I'm like, ooh, ball, let's go, so you don't think about it, you just do, and that's a huge value when you're trying to exert yourself. So some examples of gamifying exercise, Simon says, and I gave you some easy ones, or not some easy ones, some easily translatable ones, because I want you to be able to use these. So Simon says you're going to need somebody else to do this activity, okay, but it does require you to process information, and your Simon person just needs to make sure that they're giving you activities that require you to exert yourself. So it can be, Simon says, do jumping jacks. All right, now punches. Oh, I didn't say Simon says. Okay, so giving yourself different exercises to do and then having to process and filter out that information. Same concept with red light, green light. So we do things like cone shuffles, and you do red light, green light, and so you have to, when you hear red light, you gotta stop as fast as you can. When you hear green light, you've gotta go as fast as you can. So it's responding to those environmental variables, and it makes it a little fun because the other person can kind of mess with you, like red light, green light, go. Ping pong catch. We have a couple of these set up for you today so you can mess around. Ping pong catch. You can use a ping pong, you can use a table and 2 cups. It doesn't even need to be silo cups. And you just bounce the ball to each other and try to catch the ball, and you can be kind of sneaky. You can try, almost like tennis, right? Try to get the ball past the person, and the person has to catch the ball. So that uses the reaction time, and you usually have to move around, right? What else do I have? So we also have the blaze pods for you. We talked about those. Those are the lights. So some of that is also executive function. You have to filter out the lights that you don't want to hit, at least the program that we're going to use. So you're trying to hit the yellow light all the time, but there's other blaze pods that will light up red, purple, green, and you don't want to hit those ones. So it's processing that information. And we can do that for your feet. And so you have to kind of move around a circle, that type of thing. Beanbag launch, we don't have that set up for you guys today, but you basically use some cardboard and a resistance band, and you can anchor it, and you pull and you shoot your beanbags into a basket or something like that. And so you're getting some resistance exercise, but you're enjoying it because you're really not focused on the fact that you're pulling on the band, you're focused on the fact that you're shooting this beanbag. And then you're also having to coordinate that because you want to pull it just enough to get that beanbag into your basket. And then mousetrap. So this is a similar concept to the ping pong. You can use a ball. You can attach a box to your foot, and so you can roll a ball across. Somebody would roll a ball across the floor for you, and you just try to catch it with your foot. Okay. So there's a bunch of, so those are simple examples of gamifying. We know the bigger examples like sports, right? Those are the more common ways that we would gamify exercise, volleyball, basketball. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. You can do those things. So if you're trying to recreate these and you're doing them on your own, using a wall to bounce the ball off of, or if you want to get really crazy, you can use a bowl, because that varying surface will cause the ball to bounce in different directions. And so then when you bounce the ball off the bowl, you don't know where it's going to go. So you get a little bit of that unpredictability, kind of similar to having somebody else playing with you. So in summary, and I'm going to look at my slide for this because I want to make sure I hit all of these. Avoid consistency. So you don't want to be doing the same things all the time. And a lot of us are guilty of this. We have our routine. We go to the gym, we hit our routine. That's great. It's good that you're maintaining, but in some ways you're not, because when you first started doing those routines, they were new to your body. You've lost that component. So you're not maintaining the novelty component of your workout routine. And for our Parkinson's population, that's something that we definitely want to make sure we're maintaining. Always seek novel, challenging activities that require your focus. That is your goal. If you have to focus on it, then that's what you're going for. And I had this on one of the slides back there and I missed it. If it's frustrating, if it's something that you can't do, if it requires your full attention, that's what you're going for. When you think of it as training, right? It's training. So you're trying to pick those things that you can't do, and this is on the slide. Things that you can't do, so that way you can do them. That is your goal. I want to do squats because I can't get all the way down to a chair and stand up without using my hands. So I want to do that activity because I can't right now. And then I'm going to do squats. I'm going to sit down in the chair and I'm going to stand up until I can do that without using my hands. Okay, that kind of concept. So, and the more challenging the activity, the more it stimulates your brain. There's a lot of research out there to show that if you can't do it more than one time, that benefit is significantly higher than something that you can do 8 times. So hitting those things that are really, really challenging for you have the most benefit. You just need to make sure that you're being safe about it. Okay, so find those big challenges that are safe for you to do. Make sure that you're targeting all the different aspects of fitness. We're all guilty of liking certain things and not liking other things. So pretty much everybody I talk to skips stretching. Okay, make sure that you're doing your mobility training as well. Be creative. So those examples that I gave you with the mouse trap and the ping pong, those are just creative ideas, that's all. It's not like it's rocket science, right? So just approach your exercise routine with a little bit of imagination. If it's easy, it's not helping. So it really should be uncomfortable. It should be challenging. If you can do it with your eyes closed, or you can do it without really having to actually be present in the moment, it's probably not getting a whole lot of benefit. And then, like I said, do the things you can't do until you can. So that's really the goal, is you're learning to do new physical activities is the way you want to approach it. So thank you very much. I hope you learned something from the talk, and I hope that was as exciting for you as it is for me. I kind of nerd out on the science stuff. So yeah, thank you. So, and then I have some resources here, and I'll send out slides to you guys so you have them, okay? Any questions? Okay, I knew this was going to come up. How do you relate heart rate to intensity? This is that cardio component. And so a lot of what you'll hear is you want to be in heart rate zones, right? So 80 to 90% of your heart rate max, that's intense, right? 60 to 80% is moderate intensity. I don't particularly love using that as a measure because for several reasons, but you can. So there are formulas out there that you can use to estimate your max heart rate, and then you take a percentage of that, and that'll give you your target zones. And so if you're doing your intervals, you can go, okay, I want to be at 80% for 2 minutes, and I'm going to do that 3 times. And you calculate it, and you go, okay, I can look at my, we all have, well, not we all. Some of us have the watches, and so you can actually see what your heart rate is. The reason why I don't like to use that as a measure is because those calculations are, they assume that everybody who's 72 has the same max heart rate, which is not true. So your estimation is already, there's a lot of error already built into it. So you're using it as if it's like a hard science, and it really isn't. You would have to do a maximal test to see how fast your heart can actually move or how fast it can beat, and it's not safe. Most people are not going to do that. You can do submaximal testing, and that'll give you a more close approximation, but it's always an approximation. These guys are not the most accurate, and if you try using this during your exercise activity, you'll notice that there's a lag. So when you go to check your heart rate, it'll bounce around for a minute while it's trying to figure out what your heart rate is, if it's even accurate. Okay, so I don't like to use heart rate because there's a lot of error built in. So unless you really have the nice equipment and you've done your submaximal testing, which most people have not, it's not the best, in my opinion, it's not the best way to gauge your intensity. What I would say is you want to do it based on how you're feeling, how you're breathing, and how long you can keep up the activity. So if you feel like you're making a lot of effort, you probably are. If you're breathing really hard, you probably are working, your heart rate and your breathing actually coincide. But you can gauge your breathing, whereas you have no idea what your heart rate is. So you use the talk test. And so if you watch the Olympics and you watch the runners after and they go to interview them, they're like, well, I felt like I was really quick off the blocks, and they're trying to catch their breath. That's because they did an all-out effort. That was high intensity. That's like 90, 95, not 100% of their max, but they're getting up there, right? And you'll see them fatigued. They can only do it for about a minute. That's really what you're targeting for your high intensity interval training. Most people don't get there, right? It's way too uncomfortable, and they don't feel confident in that space without hurting themselves. So a lot of times people won't even hit that for their high intensity. But that's what you're going for. And then if you're trying to hit somewhere below that, you want to realistically, you want to be out of breath, okay? And you want to be out of breath to the point that it's hard to talk. That's probably your better gauge, okay? And then your other gauge is how long can you keep it up for? So if you're really hauling, if you're doing let's use that ramp, for example, on the treadmill. If you're able to do that and you can keep going, and you don't find yourself slowly creeping back on the treadmill, you're really not actually at your highest intensity. You can probably go harder. You should feel like you can't do it for more than that minute or 2 minutes. Or if you're doing it for a longer period of time, you're trying to do let's say moderate intensity, you should really start to be tired around that 30-minute to an hour mark. If you can keep going beyond that, then you didn't quite hit that mark. You're not as intense as you think you are. Cardio, I said it was one of the easiest in my opinion, but honestly, people don't tend to hit those higher intensities with their cardio because it's uncomfortable, and they'll back off. They back off before they really get tired. Any other questions on intensity or how to incorporate intensity or concepts? All right, who wants to mess around? Play some games? Okay.